Hi everyone, welcome. Just seeing how everyone is joining. Nice to see everyone. I'll just briefly introduce myself first and then go over the format. So I'm Lauren, Marketing Communications Manager at Mitte, and I'll be moderating the talk for you all today. And we also have Natalia and Marita in the background who are helping to moderate digitally. Welcome to part 2 of our live panel discussion about where smart home products are heading. Part 1 back in January was more from a venture perspective with 4 founders of smart home products. And now we'll be looking at the thought that goes into that design of products that we have at home and how design essentially defines how we interact with those very products. So I'll be introducing our great speakers in a moment and talking more about that. But just to go over the format and the overview of that, we'll be having the discussion for around 35 minutes, followed by opening up to a live Q&A. So if you have a question for a particular speaker or all the speakers, please feel free to use the kind of special Q&A section in Zoom. And you can also upvote any questions you see and like, so it has a greater chance of getting it answered. And please feel free to kind of ask throughout the talk. It doesn't have to be at the end. So I hope you find this talk valuable. And just to give an intro on what we'll be discussing, whether a product is designed to be touchless or whether we can talk to our devices, there's always that slight haziness as to how these decisions get made and whether they're designed to enhance our experience at home or whether they're just sort of gimmicks to get us hooked. So especially during a pandemic where our well-being is at the forefront, this kind of begs the question as to how our interactions with those products are developing and ultimately how they affect our quality of life now and in our future reimagined homes. So on that note, I'd like to introduce our 4 great speakers today who will be sharing their perspectives and experiences when it comes to design. So our first speaker is Benny, who's the co-founder of PONG Design, and PONG is a Berlin-based industrial design studio where they love to create desirable products which make our daily lives easier and more fun. Welcome, Benny.
Hello, nice to be here.
Next up is Johanna, Design Strategy Lead at IKEA's Innovation Hub Space 10. Space 10 is a research and design lab on a mission to create a better everyday life for people and the planet. Hi to Johanna, who's joining us from Copenhagen.
Hi, everyone.
We also have Boris, Managing Director of Goodpatch. Goodpatch is a global design company with studios in Berlin, Tokyo, and Munich. And they focus on the design, strategy, and development of digital products. Hi, Boris.
Hi, thank you, Lauren. Great to be here.
Great to have you. And finally, we have Mitte's very own Head of UX and Design, James. And for those who are not familiar with Mitte, we are a Berlin-based startup on a mission to disrupt the bottled water industry by allowing you to make mineralized water at home with our products. And ultimately, we're designing products that aim to transform the drinking water user journey from end to end. Welcome, James.
Hello, nice to be here too.
Nice to have you all here. So actually, just to start our discussion, I want to refer to part 1, which was in January, because I asked the question, where has the journey of smart home products gone? What has been the trajectory? How have they changed? And I'd actually like to lead on from that and asking more from a design thinking perspective. So maybe the first wave of smart home products were focused on looking ultra modern, maybe tech was really at the center of the home, and that was a symbol of being modern and future forward, being wireless, touchless, and now voice assisted. And now maybe being more accustomed to tech. In the home, we crave more kind of subtle products that are not so obvious, maybe even tactile. Maybe we crave actual buttons on our coffee machines. Benny, as a product designer, how would you say smart home products in their design from the past 10 years has changed?
That's a very interesting question. And I would say it started, like one of the first smart home products that really caught my interest was the Nest thermostat. It was I think exactly 10 years ago when the first version was launched. And back then it was really everything was focused on an innovative tech and like how it improved the system, and the design, and also like the color material especially was very techy iPhone-like. I mean, it was from one of the leading engineers from the iPhone, and you could see this kind of a round version of an iPhone attached to the wall, and it became kind of the mission control of your heating. And just if you take this as an example and look how the development of the industrial design from the Nest thermostat evolved over the past 10 years. Right now, you have a mirror finish on the front, and the material is like of the housing itself became white and matches with the color of the wall. So this is a very good example of how tech merges more with our living spaces, and it's more about unobtrusive integration instead of this standout and loud presentation of the new technology which is captured in this device. And I've seen this in a lot of devices. For example, Google just I would say they established this this noun of like, or this this description of soft tech, where you have all these Google devices are super soft, approachable, and they are covered in textiles, which make them blend in our living spaces instead of like invade them. I think this is like one very obvious trend, which is probably also based on like the mass market, where we are, which like this new technology products are going to. In the beginning, like smart home was more niche and like addressing to early adopters, which had been super keen on tech, and they also don't mind, or like even they wanted to have a obvious piece of tech on their wall. And right now, as we are like approaching new user groups, I think it's like less about this presentation of tech, but more having the benefit of it. So it's not more about the device, it's more about the function which comes with the product.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, James, then do you also agree, and do you think this has been, why do you think this is, that it's kind of this more integrated in our lifestyle and in our homes? Is it because of sort of information overload? Why do you think this has occurred?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at 10 years in tech terms, it's a huge amount of time. Like, so many things have changed. And like Benny said, like in the early days, you know, the users, the amount of users that were willing to try these things was so much smaller. And in turn, it was very fresh in designers' minds. You know, like what is a smart product? You know, what are the features? What are the functions? And I think so many companies that were trying to push smartness and integrate physical products into digital connected services. You know, what were those features? What were those benefits? So many companies tried so many different approaches, and there was so many failures, I think, over the past 10 years. You know, like Benny said, like it was almost like they were trying to overemphasize the technology and what it could do. You know, they were putting it in like front and center into the users' lives. You know, like here's a very shiny, you know, they use shiny materials, glossy materials. They thought it was a good idea, obviously, to put big screens on every smart device. And then when you put a big screen on a smart device, then they think, okay, I'm going to design, the company's going to design their own UI design system, and they're going to integrate kind of a unique OS system. And what that did was just create a huge amount of pain points and complexities in having that integrated into your home. Like what it basically meant that the average user struggled to kind of enjoy these products. You know, it became another task that they had to do, as opposed to the proposition of these products was saying, okay, we're going to improve your daily tasks, whether it's like Benny said, like controlling your heating, or controlling your fridge, or your, you know, anything. What could it be? But I think after that kind of difficult transition period, obviously we know that smartphones were becoming more and more integrated in people's lives. So the smartphone as a hub of their interactions with various services became more and more common. So it was logical that smart products would try and integrate themselves into that point of contact with users, and they saw it as a way of how do we seamlessly integrate. And like Benny mentions, like the industrial design followed that. Maybe the concept is, instead of a shiny device stuck on your wall, or a shiny device on your counter next to your TV or in your kitchen, it becomes like a softer, more subtle device that is almost like adding a layer into your home, like almost like a tactile layer on the wall. And I understand why designers chose to do that, because the motives of the product were kind of leaning towards being always present, but not too in the face of users. So that's why they use fabric, because let's reference a pillow or a curtain. Pillows and curtains don't have microphones and cameras in them, but if we wrap it in fabric, then it's not too much of a all-seeing technological device in that space. So there's many different design choices, some questionable, but I think it's all about integrating the smart, the current thinking is like integrating the smart features and functions and the benefits of that into a user's already established digital preferences. So making a product connect to their chosen operating system, or if they like to use voice assistants, then allowing them to choose that setting. So it's all about giving the choice to integrate into any number of ways a user can connect to it.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, it's kind of now not the only choice. It's not that the only choice is being confronted with so much tech. So obviously, you have the choice to kind of have both, or to have it more muted. Johanna, in terms of design topics that you've come across, what do you think about this kind of journey in design thinking? What have you come across at Space 10?
Yeah, I think Benny and James highlighted some really interesting points about how visible technology is in our homes and in our lives. And I think, something that we've observed at Space 10, one of our projects was thinking about autonomous vehicles. And we did a quick Google search of car of the future, and the images that come up are very, for lack of a better word, masculine, in terms of they're these cold, hard, forms of technology. I think, when we look at the iPhone, it's designed for a man's hand. And so I think some of the really great parts about home technology is designers are forced to think about who are in the home and what are their aesthetic preferences, what are their usability preferences. And I think that has a huge impact on a lot of the softer design and thinking about technology in the home as being more family friendly, as opposed to designing for a reference man, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really interesting. And then leading on from that, in terms of really thinking about the user at home, Boris, I know that you go into people's homes literally to conduct your own research sometimes, and you think about how to improve daily lives by looking to the user. What are the kind of key needs or trends that are cropping up in your opinion, and how have these trends or needs translated into kind of tangible design solutions?
Yeah, first of all, I think what the others said, I really can relate to this. I must say, or I would ask the others also, like, are we really have we gotten far in those 10 years, in terms of smart home devices? I am personally not so impressed with what I see out there. And I look at my own home, and there is almost no smart device. that I would be using. And if I'm not using at the very early adopter, like who else would be using these devices, you know? And this is something that I find a really strange situation. The voice interfaces don't really work so well. You run out of questions for your Alexa after a very short time, you know. For me, I was thinking what would be a product that I really fascinated by, and a smart home device that I really love it for my time living in Japan would be really the Japanese washlet, you know. Japanese companies, like the company who developed the washlet really hit the spot there. Like it is just something that every household has, and that's the smart home device that I always think of, which I love. Anybody who has been to Japan knows what I'm talking about. It's heated, it has you know, different functions, and it's super exciting to just have it in your home. It's a comfort place. I think what I see happening is that we all would agree that life happens beyond screens. Now my that life happens beyond screens, and I think we as designers have this responsibility to really question ourselves, like how much do we want to have people look on their smartphones more and more, you know, and spend every minute of their free time on the smartphone, and how can we get rid of that necessity to look at the screens at all times, and that is big responsibility I think we have, and that the screens luckily are disappearing from the devices, as the smartphone can serve as a remote control. But then I'm looking at the smartphone again all the time, and I would love to see the next phase of interfaces where we don't have to look at the phone anymore.
And do you see that the user wants it to be less smart, like wants to have less screens? And I mean, you were saying, you know, you looked around your home and you wouldn't define anything as smart. Is that what the user wants, that they want things that they can perceive as smart? They want less of that? What do you think?
I think people try to create this kind of spaces, which like a sanctuary where they can just turn off everything around them, especially now that we're really looking at screens all day long to do our work. And then the home will probably become more and more a place where you're offline and and just don't want to feel like you're watching something related to work. That I think for me it is very different watching even a movie on the TV than if I would watch movies on my MacBook, which I use for work all day long. And then that switch is important. I think people want to have those switches more in their lives, I could imagine.
And Johanna, what do you think about that, and what kind of topics have come up in the research that Space 10 has been conducting?
Yeah, what Boris just said really resonated with me. You know, we've asked the question in Space 10 around if we want to design smart home products that people actually want, you know, who even owns smart home products? And everyone in Space 10 was, you know, I don't want an Alexa, you know, listening in. And I think it was really eye-opening to realize that us who are working on it have this paranoia around smart home products. And I think the insight there is that people don't want smart home products. What they want is a life at home that they don't have to think about all of these different, you know, administrative or chore related activities. They want to be mentally free to spend time with their family or relax or cook or do all these other things. And in that context, smart home products are a tool or a way to achieve that. And that's, I think, what makes some smart home products really successful is when they become invisible. I think James mentioned it, they sort of, or Benny, but they sort of disappear into the background of your life.
Really interesting, because then that begs the question about is there a line to be drawn between products that kind of just do everything for you and there's like everything is very automated, that they encourage a kind of automated lifestyle that removes this physical interaction, versus products that are convenient and they add value because they're convenient. And Joanna, I don't know if you want to answer that.
Yeah, I have a quick answer, which is to say, I think it will vary from person to person. You know, for some people, cooking is this immense pleasure, and for other people, it's this horrible chore that they just have to get through or avoid. So I think for some people, automation is really what will give them a better life at home, and for some people, it's just a little increase in convenience.
Mm-hmm. And Benny, what do you think as the sort of on the ground designer of these products? Do you think there is a line that needs to be drawn, or do you agree with Joanna in that it's really dependent on people's particular needs and lifestyles?
Definitely, yeah. And I would love to jump to what Boris said. I think it's like a very big topic at the moment that people feel distracted by their mobile phone, and you spend way too much time. And for me, I have some smart home devices, but what I'm actually looking for a lot of times is digital detox. And also when I come home, this is more or less this border where I don't want to have a screen anymore in front of me. But I realize a lot of times when I leave my home, it gives me a peace of mind if I have control, or my iPhone becomes my remote for my smart home. And ideally, like I have a smart heating and a smart lighting system, and the smart heating, for example, it tracks where I am, and then when I'm leaving home, it automatically shuts down the heating, and when I'm approaching home, it heats up. And I also have like the schedule set, so when I got up in the morning, the bathroom is warm, but I'm 100% sure I can also track it later in my phone if the heating jumped off or like went off, or if it didn't work, I can just do it remotely. And I think this is for me like a nice benefit. But when I'm home, I don't have to use my iPhone anymore. And then I have this smart thermostat and also like the radiator valves, where I have this super basic function of turning manually down the heating or turning it up. And for us industrial designers, it's a lot of time the question, which are the core functionalities you still want to use on the machine or on the device itself, and also elevate this physical interaction to a nice interaction. So, for example, if you think about a stereo or a record player, where you have some knobs, and these knobs, they are super high grade, and you have a nice turn to lower or higher the volume. These are these key interaction points which people really enjoy and like, or like we try to keep them, identify them, and keep them on the physical product itself. And everything this is like too cluttered and maybe second level of information we can put to the iPhone, because this you maybe use just once on the setup screen, and no need to add all this interface parts to the physical design device and on the first information layer, but push this away to the smartphone where it's not visible always. And this helps to make products calmer, and gives us the freedom to design them in an unobtrusive way, and to create a fit with the living rooms, So this is very, very interesting chance for us, where we see a very interesting development in smart home products. That what also James said in the beginning. Everybody was adding like his own UI, and right now it's more a dedicated choice or considered choice. Mm-hmm. What do you want to have? And ideally, I'm completely with Johanna. It depends what the people are looking for. Some people still like an Nespresso one push button machine, but some people tend to go back to a super analog espresso machine, where you have like some hardcore knobs and you have to tinker a little bit to get a nice espresso. But this becomes then more a hobby, and maybe if you get more space on your kitchen counter because other devices shrink or become invisible, you have more space for the products you really like to interact with, and which are fun.
Mm-hmm. James, do you agree, and do you then think that designers should bear in mind these different sort of user needs, and bear that in mind with a sense of responsibility? As everyone kind of touched upon this kind of designer responsibility to the user.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about giving choice again. You know, some users love automation. Some users like to dig deep into the details. And then when we're designing a product, obviously it's fulfilling a function. You know, that we have through the product development process, you know, we're analyzing the user needs and expectations and all the user journeys around that and touch points of the product. But there comes to a point of like, you know, how much of the task does the product need to complete for the user? You know, maybe some things it's better that the user has like engaging interaction with the product as opposed to like a passive interaction. You know, like you know, so voice assistants, they just basically say that, you know, I'm the fountain of knowledge. You just ask me and I'll give you everything you need. But that's not really a conversation, is it? They make it out like it's a conversation, but it's not so much of a conversation with the product itself. So I think it's about defining, like, you know, what is the essence of the product and the function, and how can that be kind of focused upon in a user's mind when they need to do it. And it's a very important point, like, when does a user need to do it? How much is the effort involved in that particular task with the product? And then giving the option to the user of having their choice of engagement level with that. So, you know, if it's just an example in my home, like, yes, I'm wary of smart products, but I like smart products that give you the option to automate, but also give you the option to play with them, and have that joyous experience with it. So every single light in my entire house is a smart. I'm not going to name the brand because I'm not going to do some product placement, but it did it well. So every single light, and I've even added extra lights in very odd places, just because through automation you can have such a beautiful experience with a smart product. And you know, I do my initial setup and think about what do we want from this product, and then maybe push it to its limits and discover it. So you have this kind of discovery phase in the user journey with it. But then when you get to a place where you can see the benefits, then it kind of does merge into the background. So all the lights in the house are kind of connected to the rhythms of the natural world. So when the sun rises, then some lights start to come on in the house. And when the sun goes down, and you know, we want to start relaxing with the family, with the kids, get people ready for bed, you know, like then the lights kind of have that conversation with us in that situation. And that's where I see the beauty of smart products. And I think we need to be careful and have responsibility about, we shouldn't be too arrogant. Like, you know, what can we do for the users? You know, like, okay, we're going to create a product that makes you a pizza from end to end of that user journey. But is it really going to satisfy them in what a pizza should be? You know, if they really want to enjoy what a pizza could be, then they'll go to a beautiful restaurant in the neighborhood. But if they want to make a pizza in the home, maybe we should elevate the product to extract that passion out of the user, and focus on that. So that would be focusing on, like, what's the best things about making a pizza, as opposed to doing it all for them. And I think you can apply that to how products communicate to the users as well, and making sure that any sort of communication is contextual. A user doesn't need to know everything about what's going on with the product. They only need to know when it's something important. And that is reflected in modern industrial design, because, you know, a lot of smart products at the moment are using hidden UI elements and contextual UI elements. So you don't see that there's anything wrong until there is something wrong. So then an LED is only shown through a material when a user needs to respond to and act to an interaction.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you've spoken a lot about things sort of being our choice and user choice, but I think we also can't discredit that sometimes we adopt habits that we might not intend to adopt, you know, going on our phone more often than we want to. Johanna, so from a large scale perspective, and talking again about responsibility and user habits, choosing what to focus on because of the impact it has, you know, for example, wireless charging pads adopted by IKEA on such a large scale can be trickled down into everyone's homes, and suddenly everyone is buying €5 wireless charging pads. So I'm quite curious how decisions are made on such a large scale and prioritized, bearing in mind this responsibility and also an awareness of the fact that that decision can have an impact potentially on our habits and the way we interact in the home.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, part of the design philosophy that maybe hasn't really had a name to it, but has, at least behind IKEA, has been, you know, a guiding philosophy. Sorry, I'm sure you can hear that I'm taking this call from home. Is that, you know, IKEA is always trying to design for the many. And if you think about who the many are, they also include minority groups. I think people with, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, it happens.
People, I think the wireless charging pad is a great example of, if you start thinking about designing for a very niche group of people. So for example, people who for some reason have a really hard time connecting a cord into an iPhone, then all of a sudden you've made this great product that everyone can use. And I think that perspective of how do we find those gaps that people are ignoring because it doesn't feel like there's a big number, but then it opens up accessibility of products. And I think a lot of what IKEA has done around smart home products has been democratizing them and not just making them luxury products, but really showing the potential of what it could do for totally normal people who aren't the early adopters with some of these products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And James, just quickly, then leading on from that about this democratizing and also the habit which we all have, which is to drink water. So with Mitte, it's a device which heavily focuses on that habit. And I suppose my question would be, what is the challenge in adding value to the user experience when we've already got this habit? Why do we need a device for that habit?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a lot of things they need to do in their day-to-day lives at home, and you know what are those habits, and you know what are their struggles. You know, Johanna mentioned the struggle of, yes, a lot of people struggle with certain things, certain daily tasks that for some are so easy, and then you know, like, we're approaching drinking water, and it's, you know, it's a very complex issue. There's so many different variables, and it's very localized. But you know, through so much research, you know, talking to a huge range of potential users to like discover what are their habits around water and water in the home, and you know, what are their issues and pain points when it comes to water. And you know, for a lot of the world, and even, you know, in the US, in a lot of countries in Europe, you know, there's serious issues with what's coming out of the tap, right? You know, this isn't a solved problem to most people. You know, like how and when to drink water the way they want it and the way they like it, or how comfortable and confident are they in what they're consuming. So I think, you know, as an example, what we do on the current product, you know, we're looking at that the user journey of drinking water, you know, from the end to end, and take an example of most people in Berlin, where we're based, or you know, a lot of places, is, you know, they either choose not to drink the tap water, or they have a preference. You know, everyone has their own preferences for drinking water, and the whole parts of the user journey are so full of problems and difficulties. You know, like, it's not such a nice task, it's not such a nice habit to have to go to supermarket and buy a huge amount of bottled waters in crates and then transport that back home. And obviously, after you've consumed that, you've enjoyed consuming
I thought only Germans do that. No?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in London, everywhere, you know, it's
They
like,
do that.
no choice. There's people don't feel like they have a choice, so they have to do that. You know, when they've enjoyed that water, because in that part of the user journey, they've got the water they like, they enjoy, so they're in that moment of, okay, this is the core moment of that habit. But then after that, there's a huge amount of waste, right? You know, like the bottles, whether they're plastic or glass, you know, is still part of a complex system that has an impact. And you know, we're looking at trying to make such substantial gains in parts of that user journey and habit of drinking water, where a user can just focus on how they like to drink it. So making them comfortable with making water directly in their house, making them comfortable knowing that there's not a lot of waste involved, there's not a big environmental impact of this habit. And as we see, like more and more consumers are really tuning into like, okay, what is my personal impact on habits I have? You know, like, you know, can I make a change but not degrade my experience? Because people are craving better experiences, but they're also craving experiences that they understand have better impacts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this actually leads on to the kind of topic of the pandemic, which has arisen sort of both wanting to have a better experience, so our well-being, but also of the planet. But first, about the well-being, I mean, our living patterns have changed, our home environment has changed to merge home office, exercise, living space in one. And Boris, you know, there are apps like Clubhouse that have arisen, which have apparently now plunged down, to create more connection and contact, supposedly. But then similarly, on the other side of the coin, on the flip side, we're also getting Zoom fatigue and almost need a protection against tech. So our well-being has come to the forefront. And I was wondering, how do you go about putting well-being at the forefront through design? How do you add value and address that user need that has arisen from the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so well-being has been a dominant trend in the last years already, and it was now, I think, a bit more widespread with the pandemic. When people are dealing with this anxiety and don't know what's going to happen, and I think especially of those people who are maybe living on their own, who probably go through these times very differently than those with families around them. But then here it's yeah, this is interesting, right? I think well-being is like one of the trends that I've seen is that the homes are becoming cleaner, so people have more time to clean up their home, but then also maybe pay more attention to this because they want to feel more comfortable. There, I could imagine that air humidifiers, you know, who also has been quite popular in Japanese homes, are more common also here, or those other little robots that help you clean your home. I don't know, I don't have one of them, but they really yeah, help a lot. But just I think homes get more cozier, cleaner, yeah, and more of a safe space. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Benny, then the other side of it that I mentioned was this heightened awareness of being more conscious, or maybe just aware of the sourcing of materials, for example. Do you think these are new values, this awareness, and has it also affected the way you've designed?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we have a big trend towards eco-consumption. I think it started more in the motivation, I'm doing something good for me. So we have seen it first in the food, that we are buying organic foods and like the I mean, the landscape of organic supermarkets has received a massive growth over the last 10 years. And what people learn there, I think, is that you have to check like the ingredients, where it comes from, that like mass or like industrial produced foods is like a super complex thing. When you take a look back to the whole journey from the field to the shelf, or like even then to me, and there are a lot of hidden problems, and this led to a more reflected consumption. And I think this right now evolves to a more reflected consumption in every aspect of buying decisions. And I mean, tech is a very hard topic, because if you look at the system we are in, I mean, like a hardcore capitalistic company, they just make most profit if they sell every year a new product, which means that you're dumping each year your mobile phone, or you have like super short iterations and new product launches. I mean, if we look at pure digital design, it's better, because you don't always have to dump the old version. You can just make a new release. But if we're talking about physical design, it's really hard, because every product ends up in the trash. And we see a lot more, a big change there. All the big companies have sustainability on their agenda. I mean, there was one company, Fairphone, which started some years ago, trying to source sustainable components for a mobile phone, and to see how complicated such a device is, and how hard it is for a small company to influence the supply chain, was really hard. But they had like a super good vision, and I think it's good to support companies like this. And right now, what we see, that Apple has sustainability very high on their agenda. Google, with their Made by Google devices, they have for each product like the carbon footprint, and say how much recycled plastic or aluminium they use, and they want to become climate neutral until this and that point. So I think it's definitely there, but potentially also driven because it's like an omnipresent topic and you can't put it aside. But we have to be careful that it's not becoming a marketing argument, or like a debate, that you just say, okay, and by the way, we are also sustainable. We see this a lot when we talk with new companies about like innovative product development. And we had like, me and my partner, we have like next to PONG, we had like a started as a portfolio project, a sustainable toothbrush company, where we just use natural or like sustainable raw materials for this product. So we had some expertise, and a lot of times companies come to us and say, yeah, and by the way, we want to make it out of bioplastic because it's state of the art and it's sustainable, but we don't want to invest more time than if we make it out of normal plastic. And then you always see when we tell them, okay, we need 2 more years for the product development because we don't have a proof how this material behaves, and there are like no results we can rely on. Barely one company or like, say it's worth this, then they just say, okay, then maybe we be cutting this from the agenda, and we try to donate for a charity organization, and this is our green point. So I think every company wants to communicate it, but a lot of companies don't take this extra mile to really go for sustainable sourced materials. Yeah.
For the longevity, yeah. I think just before we jump to Q&A, I wanted to ask a question about sort of elevating the home life and what's next to actually make our homes better or have a better home life. And Johanna, I saw that Space 10 and IKEA have teamed up to facilitate the project Everyday Experiments, which is about reinventing or reimagining everyday life and everyday living by adding an element of fun or play. So maybe you could just tell us quickly about that, and also do you think that means we're starting to understand that play is relevant and an important part of adding value? You know, it's not just about function and how to help breed a convenient lifestyle. It's about adding that joy actively.
Yeah, that's a great question. And just a little plug, we have a new batch of experiments launching on the 26th of May. But I think maybe I'm giving away something, but one of our experiments is with some of our partners, Tin and Ed from Australia, and they have these really provocative designs that are crazy colors and just, you know, insanity. And the thinking behind it actually is that if we stick to this minimalist Scandinavian aesthetic, our brains become lazy in a way. Whereas if we have this color and this craziness, then it adds this mental stimulation of having those visual pieces in the home. And a lot of that is related to play too, play is what activates you know, creativities and ideas and thinking. And so I certainly at least hope that a lot of smart products will be adding that element of play to our lives, because it certainly, in general, play is what really makes life worth living. And I think someone in the chat asked about favorite smart home products. And when I think about my favorite smart home product, it's this like silly click and grow, like easy planter. And it's because it's this like playful thing to like play with plants and not screw it up. And it doesn't add really any function. I'm not getting food from it. But that's just a long way of saying that I think that play will be a really important part of distinguishing which smart home products will go in that paranoia category of I don't really want it in my home, and which smart home products will actually add value and people will really want as part of their homes.
Really interesting. Yeah, okay, well then let's lead it on to the Q&A now that you alluded to it. They are upvoted, so I think I'll just start with the first one because that's fair. This is from Yanis, and it says, we see consumers becoming increasingly conscious about ethically sourced food. Do you see a similar trend for the materials used to build home products? James, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, I think Benny alluded to it. It's not so straightforward because you know obviously things like plastic are massively demonized the past few years, and with good reason. You know, takeout places should not be handing out plastic forks and knives every order. You know, or single-use plastics in any regard shouldn't be used. But you know, materials, there's such a vast range of materials, right? And it all comes down to like each individual material, you know, like what is the impact of it? Like where is it from? How is it made? What is the recyclability of it? Is there a system in place to deal with this material? So you can't just put a material on the plate and say, yeah, this is a material, it's good or bad. You have to look at all the interconnected elements of the process of a material, and then assess it. But that is super difficult for the average consumer to think about. They just think, oh, it's plastic, I hate it, I don't want it in my home. But then a lot of bioplastics, not all of them, some of them are great. A lot of bioplastics are insanely difficult to deal with. Yeah, of course they're less toxic, but they're not recyclable. So where are they going to go? What is the second life of the material? And what is the third life of the material? So I think it's really important for the designers to do their work on this part and really just like make sure that their material choices are thoroughly considered, you know, like down to the tiniest detail, not just because it looks nice, not just because it functions well, but like where does it come from? How is it made? Can we recycle it easy into some new products after its lifetime is over? And also the longevity of the material, you know, like, you know, if you're using like high quality metals, then you should be designing the product to last for a very long time. You know, like it shouldn't break easily. So it's all these questions that are product designer's job to do, and then we just need to fully communicate to the consumer the why we chose that, right? So it's not about saying this is the better material than this material, but it's like, why did we choose to use this material, and then present the fact that we know exactly everything about this material. And then a consumer feels comfortable, like, okay, they really know what they're talking about. They know why they chose it. They know what they're going to do with the material after it's reached its lifetime. And it's just being open and transparent about those choices. Because sometimes plastic's a good choice, sometimes it's a very bad choice. Sometimes wood's a good choice, sometimes it's not the best choice. And I think we'll see in the future with product design and smart products, the smartness will become so cheap, the electronics, the sensors, the LEDs, that we'll see like products literally just evaporating into different materials. So, I mean, I have a friend of a friend, and they're developing like touch sensors that are so thin that you could stick them to a wall or a floor, or carpet over them, or paint over this product, and then you can just touch the wall and things will happen. You could walk into your house and run your fingers along the material of the wall, and then it would activate your TV or turn on your heating or activate your lights. So I think, as long as materials are well thought out and communicated why we use them, and also don't overuse materials. Like I said, the smart product could just be so simple that it could just be integrated into a user's life without creating any excessive material. And I think that's where it's going.
Mm-hmm. And Boris, I saw that you were also typing an answer. I don't know if you wanted to add to that as well, whether there's a similar trend for these materials as there is for food.
Yeah, so like in the design space, there's a great trend which is called Planetcentric Design, and kind of as a continuation of the human-centered design discipline that we are all part of, and then realizing in the last years how egoistic that actually sounds from a planet perspective. So Planetcentric Design, we structure it in 4 kind of movements. So it's first of all moving the attention from humans to planet and including that as a stakeholder, and then from quantity to quality. So I really bothered by smart products, which I know they're gonna not get old well, so they're gonna be outdated in a few years. Where I buy a table, I can have that for my lifetime. And then from short to long-term thinking, how will that be, used for a long time, and I don't have to buy a new device next year. And from a market fit, purely market fit kind of perspective, shifting to a planet fit. And that is, I think, a great topic, which I hope more and more agencies will put above the human-centeredness in the design field.
I actually want to ask the next question that Johanna's already answered, but I wanted to ask it to the rest of you. What is your favorite smart home product and why? This is from the Q&A.
I answered already in the chat. Also, I really love the experience that we could give our grandma when we equipped her with cameras on the outside of her house. She couldn't sleep so well. She lives in a big house and then was worried that somebody would break in at night. And then just knowing that those cameras are there, I think already had that psychological effect that she's gonna sleep well.
That wouldn't fit in the paranoia category that Johanna was talking about, or the safety. Benny, do you also have a favorite smart home product, maybe one that you've designed or otherwise?
Yeah, I think I stick with my smart thermostat. Yeah, I think there's a strong personal connection because we designed it, and I think it really meets this, or has this sweet spot of like adding convenience, and it's eco-friendly. I mean, it just saves electricity or gas because it's just heating on demand, and by that, so I saved 30% of heating costs since I have it, but still it's always warm when I need it. And that's for me like really smart, or smart home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The next question we have is a really interesting one. It's from Claire, and it reads, related to what Johanna was saying about designing for everyone, what would be design solutions in creating smart products for less affluent segments of society? Johanna, I don't know if you want to start off first.
Yeah, I think a great starting point is to just mentally think about smart products as being for everyone, as being relevant. And then in terms of a design solution, I think this is one of the areas where there might not be a lot we can do in product design, but there's a lot that can be done in systems design to think about how do we make these smart products more affordable, whether that be instead of thinking of them as a product, but think about them as a service or a subscription or a shared resource. So I think there's a lot of room there to rethink the sort of product consumer user relationship. And that's where these smart products will really become accessible for less affluent segments of society.
Mm-hmm. James, I don't know if you also want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen some examples of how you know, like a product can become like shared ownership in parts of like a small community, and you know how they can utilize the benefits of a product together, as opposed to as a showpiece in someone's home, right? So I think as we see the technology becoming, you know, the actual tech will become cheaper and cheaper. But then if you're looking at maybe a neighborhood smart product, you know, like maybe it's a smart product that kind of connects children and families together in an area, and you know, the children can have their own unique notifications, you know, between them to kind of create a sense of joy and play and community between them. I'm just thinking here, but I think the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper every year, and then, like Johanna said, it's part of like the systems around it, and obviously they're getting more and more democratized in terms of it's kind of, yes, a lot of big corporations are still holding onto these systems very tightly, but I keep on seeing more and more clones of what they do, but are more open for everyone to use and play, and don't have to spend a lot of money to use them. So I think it's kind of positive, but I think as designers, we need to think about how we can open up our products to a wider user base.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question in the Q&A is, what possibilities do you see for voice-controlled products that don't need an internet connection, so can be embedded in products with less constraints? Benny, would you like to start?
I think it's from a technical perspective, it's quite hard, because then you need a lot of like engine power in each device, and so it's like this nice thing of the connected devices, that you have like some cloud engine which processes like the voice control, and you don't need like a CPU in each device, or like a big library. And I don't know, I don't see such a big future in this, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, the idea is like I like it, because that's also, it conflicts a bit with my my perception of privacy, or my fear of privacy. If I have like a microphone in each device, and this is like connected to the internet, I don't know who listens and which company listens, and what's actually the hidden agenda of like putting a microphone everywhere. But on the other side, this would mean that I equip each product with this voice control with a own engine, and this is it's a bit, yeah, too much resource for just talking to a product, from my perspective. And I'm also with the others. I haven't seen such a big benefit from voice control. It was very interesting when Alexa was launched, and I don't know, we did some products where Alexa integration was kind of new. We'd been to a trade show where this had been introduced, and we have seen everywhere in each booth. I think it was for domestic products. It was like a sign. Now works with Amazon Alexa, or hey Google, can you turn the light on? But when I look right now to this development, it never reached this hype. So I'm also personally, I'm wondering, do I want to interact with products or with tech in the same way I interact with people? And since I've seen this movie Her, I found it quite scary what this kind of interaction you're used to between person to person, how this changed your perception of tech. And I can't answer you the question, is it a good or bad development that maybe I have a digital friend and this helps me not being lonely. I mean, right now, a lot of people get pets because they don't want to feel lonely. Maybe a digital buddy is better. But for me, there is like this clear barrier. And I also, when I'm alone, it feels very strange to tell somebody who's not there to turn the light down. And
then would it help if you would see that person? Like, you know, that I find that interesting with the world of artificial influencers and these characters that you then talk to, and then you don't realize anymore that you're actually talking to nothing, you know. There's some feedback, some response, a facial kind of gesture.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that with augmented reality, right? Because we're still so much in the early days of this conversation with a voice that's somewhere else, that it's outside, connected to. We know it's connected to the vast internet and the data and servers. You know, most people understand that now, and they understand the dangers of it. So it is still a very strange interaction, you know, with physical products, with physical tasks. We are still human beings with arms and legs and fingers, and you know, and we can a lot of things we can cover physically. But I think we'll see those once we start seeing like augmented reality, like not just through a phone camera, maybe it's glasses, or maybe it's projected, or maybe it's on the windows of your house, right? It might be a bit strange to have some strange character person, but I think when the voice assistants and when the AI starts getting represented a bit more visually, as well as with voice control, then people will adopt it. I'm guessing. I'm just making a guess myself, but I'm guessing that people will start engaging with it more and more, spending more time engaging with these assistants.
I saw it last year at CES before Corona. There was this artificial intelligence startup with this human-like characters that were all computer generated, and they could speak, you know, to you, and they could speak in different languages, and then it became clear to me that this will be the future of voice interactions, and you just feel like having a conversation to that virtual body, and then there is some interactions with that device behind it.
I think this is also interesting because, again, with Johanna, with these everyday experiments, when Benny was talking about whether he wants to actually interact with the device and whether he wants the kind of human interaction to be as natural as possible, I was thinking of those experiments that Space 10 and IKEA have done with mimicking more natural gestures for lights, or when James mentioned about augmented reality, you know, being able to see how music kind of moves around your home as you listen. Maybe what do you think about this question, you know, the possibilities for whether it's voice controlled products or other types of human interactions they mimic or address?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and it definitely seems like there's a trend to humanizing the products that we surround ourselves with. In some of the experiments that will be launched, one of them is thinking about our objects as little characters and actually as a digital buddy. I think one of them is called But it's kind of an existential question of what kind of relationship do we want to have with our products? Do we want a personal relationship, you know, a la her, or are they just objects to us? And I think that's something that we as a species don't have an answer to. I think it's very different how people think about their technology, and I think that will continue to change over the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
We had in Japan, and with the grandma, we had of my wife, we had a robot already many years ago for the grandma, who it was just like a puppet kind of, but then like it was speaking every now and then, saying a few words like, isn't it cold today, or I'm getting tired, and then like it was just like a cat that would be making a sound every now and then. And that was that you can find a lot in elderly homes in Japan. And another simple interaction which came to my mind, probably also integrated in some IKEA products, but like the light, which is kind of breathing, you know, like also Apple products have it sometimes, but it's a rhythm, like you're breathing, and it's the light gets a bit brighter, a bit less, and that kind of behavior, I think, is already also making you feel something special. Yeah.
And did those elderly people, were they very comfortable with this addition in their home? Was it also helpful?
The other example, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when people are getting dementia and so on, I think, I don't know how they feel. I mean, they probably, yeah, maybe cannot differentiate so much what exactly is, but yeah, and you cannot really tell if they feel better or not, but it's yeah.
But it was a companion nonetheless.
A companion, kind of.
Interesting. Okay, so
and it was 10 years ago or something like that. Yeah,
okay.
Already.
Just to go to another question, which was building on a previous question before from someone called Johanna. So in case the consumer wants to do an upgrade because there is a new version of the device, should we consider the collection of the equipment by the manufacturer in order to take advantage of parts that have a great environmental impact? Or the manufacturer could properly send for waste or recycle, also including the kind of discount program in the case of an upgrade, so reverse logistics. So I suppose, yeah, this question is about the separating of the parts once you want to upgrade and that kind of environmental impact. James, what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely the job of the designers and engineers to make sure that a product can be reverse dismantled. You know, it's I've experienced it a lot in the past where, you know, there's a product out there and it's got 15 different types of materials, and they've glued it together, they've welded it in a way. And it's just a nightmare to deal with, you know, and that's why we see the shipping of electronic waste to various parts of the world that really doesn't want it or need it. So, you know, we should really think about, okay, you know, how are these products constructed? How do we simplify the level of materials? How do we like consolidate electronics into one particular area? So, you know, like when it is end of life and it has to get dealt with, it can be dealt with properly. I mean, it's in an ideal world, yes, like the company themselves know the product into the minutest detail, so they are the best. They are the best way of dealing with that. But as we know, that's not going to happen, is it? You know, like the companies themselves are not going to take all their products back. But the key is, you know, releasing a product on the market that's easy to deal with from that perspective, and also making sure that the systems that are in place in a particular market or country can properly deal with it, so it becomes not an issue, right? But I mean, I love to design products that last a long time, right? That's the number one thing you need to do. Make sure the product lasts a long time. And then number two, what happens when it breaks or dies or needs to be dealt with.
I think that's when if I can jump on this, yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, what James mentioned, I think they're like, or also like connected to what Boris says, this big design trend for design for the planet. There are like two action parts for industrial design, which is like called design for disassembly and design for repairability. And I think their companies can do a lot in like trying to be more transparent, and instead of like saying, hey, if your washing machine doesn't work anymore, it's just get a new one, because it's more expensive to get it repaired than getting a new one, because like the actual cost is way higher than just like the 800 euro you pay for your washing machine. So they could design it a bit more, and also like launch blueprints, or like make use of 3D printing or repair shops that you can just show what is like the most common problem of products, and you might launch like a 3D print service that you like get these spare parts. I think that's something what you explore sometimes, or what you see sometimes. And I think as well, like the companies are the ones which know their products best. And if you look to recycling or like a industrial waste plant, they don't have time and don't have a clue how to disassemble the parts. So it's really, it should be, I think, but there has to be a law which just forces like the companies either to take it back, but like for a startup, it's super hard to manage all this infrastructure or like the logistics to take it back. But maybe like that you have a dedicated repair place which could be used like a warehouse for different companies. And I think systems like this should grow, or actually our.
I mean, unfortunately, the business models don't allow that of most companies, right?
That's the problem.
That's the problem. It's we have to enact like change at quite well at the top levels, the very top levels. Especially when it comes to repairability and upgradability of products. You know, I spent many of my early 20s and teenage years upgrading and fixing Mac computers, but those days are long gone, unfortunately. I understand why they did it. I see their points. I see that there's some positive points on that, but yeah, it's difficult to push forward. But I think that they will be forced to act soon. They have to. There's a lot of people are very switched on now to their consumption of technological devices. You know, a lot of people are getting annoyed with how quickly they have to replace phones or laptops.
Yeah.
I think when consumers really just demand it, and you can see it. I see people always walking around with iPhone 8s. You know, they just don't want to upgrade because it still works to the capacity that they want it. Big companies and corporations will probably just follow that and think about new ways of creating products.
I think you mentioned like a very interesting point with Apple, that back then you could just upgrade them or like their devices and repair them. And but they had been one of the first companies which like glued like the screen to the cover glass. So this means when your iPhone falls, like the whole assembly breaks, and just because, or actually just the glass cover is broken, the screen still works, but you have to get like a complete new assembly for 140 euro, which is not sustainable and the user doesn't like. So I think this is like, and this is very bad, I think, what the company did there, because you sacrifice sustainability for the sake of like a nice slim device which you label as good design, and that's super manipulative and shouldn't exist. And I think therefore this has to change definitely, because that was the wrong direction.
I think that's actually a good note to end on, because we only have a minute left, but very interesting to also see that good design isn't just something that looks pretty and sleek, but is also planet-led as well as people-led. But yeah, on that note, I would just like to take a moment to thank everyone for joining, obviously our attendees, but Johanna, Benny, Boris, and of course, James, thank you very much. This is very interesting. And yeah, thanks to everyone else and all your great questions.
Thank you. You organized a really awesome event.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for moderating. Yeah.
Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully soon we can do this in person, in reality, and because then it's always nice after, you know, have drinks, talk about these things more.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Nice to see nice comments as well from people.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
evening.